What's going on, everybody? Sam Dando here today again with MinMax Games to bring you another deck tech, but today I'm very excited because we get to dive into the world of the Living Legend format, which I have been working on and kind of getting prepared for the calling that's coming up in December. And what better way to start than with one of the most powerful decks that has ever existed that is now, I would say, kind of in a weaker state, but is still quite powerful. So today I'll be doing a Living Legend deck profile on Zen. All right, so to get started here, I'm just gonna say the main deck here is a very solid 60 card core. I'm kind of having a difficult time deciding how I want to sideboard, so I was actually hoping with this video I could get a lot of good opinions in the comment section or different ideas from viewers to see kind of what they're trying out or what they might do. With the Living Legend format, there is not as much data out there, and there are so many viable heroes that it can be very difficult to try to create tech cards or alter your game plan to have good matchup points across the board. So my goal is to just make the most solid 60 card core that does the Zen thing, right? Like it's the most consistent, most powerful, and most straightforward of I'm just going to kill you kind of a game plan. So it's not the most crazy thing you've seen. I'm sure you'll see a lot of these cards, but to get started, we just have our basic red combo cards. So we have Aspect of Tiger Body, we have 3 Chase the Tail, 3 Tiger Swipe, 3 Mauling Key, 2 Breed Anger, and then we have triple 100 wins, so these are like our Tiger cards. Now we just have our normal good ones. 300 wins, 3 Spinning Wheel. I'm still playing 3 Descendant because although we got hit pretty hard in the ban by restricting only Bonds of Ancestry to 1, I do still think that this card, surprisingly throughout testing, has still performed obviously very well, but it's still very relevant to where I do want to play the Descendants still at 3. It is just a go again card. It is a 1-cost 3 go again combo, so you can still hit it off of the Ancestral Harmony. And then also having it open to Bonds is still quite powerful. We'll see a little bit later as we get into the deck profile too, other ways where you can play Bonds again with Preserved Tradition, things like that. So I am still playing a semi-traditional Zen list where I'm still kind of playing into the Bonds line and I'm not going away from it because it's still very viable in my testing. And then of course, just 3 Command & Conquer. You know, nothing crazy, just very good card still. It's still a good popper, which is very relevant against all the prisms and even Dromai and things like that. And it's just very relevant in terms of disrupting too against the aggro races, because in Living Legend format, you know, there are so many hyper aggro decks, so many super fast aggressive decks where if you have any level of disruption with like Command & Conquer, it could still save you quite a bit for that turn. And then we have, of course, the legendary Art of War, which I have had so much fun having this card back. I can't believe how much I missed it. But having this card alongside of Bonds of Ancestry, and now having some time to be separated from them in the class constructed format, I will say these cards are really stupid. Like, I can't believe Bonds of Ancestry was ever at 9. Now being desensitized from it and being away from it for a little bit, just playing 1 feels so unfair sometimes. So ultimately it was the right call to ban Art of War and even put Bonds of Ancestry to 1. I also like it because it helps you kind of retain more identity from Zen, where you get to still play more into the Tiger thing. You're not just playing like Bonds of Ancestry spam. All right, so then going into the blues, we have Ancestral Harmony, of course. That's also why we're kind of keeping a higher combo count, so we could still play this card because it is still so good. Triple Wind Chakra, it is just great. It's like good enough, you know, like 3 block, free transcending off of the card. I still think it's quite good. You could probably trim on it if you were looking to play other blues, but I'm still a big fan of Wind Chakra. And then we have the triple levels of Enlightenment. Again, quite strong. You would not play it. And then we have our sick 1-of package where we're just playing all the 1-ofs. Again, Orihan, awesome card. I missed this card so much again too. It is so fun to just have a triple draw card in the deck, an uber high roll card. Sometimes you just win straight out the gate because of this card. Again, very good decision that it was banned. Now playing with it in LL format, I can agree that this card is quite stupid. And then we have all of our really, really good Transcend cards, which I'm playing every single one that you can in the game because As Zen, it is extremely important to be able to transcend right out the gate as fast as possible, because a lot of your hero power and your ability lies in having being able to have transcended. So we want to make sure we play all of them, because the most powerful things that you can do in the game rely on being able to transcend. And then we have our sad one of Warmonger's Diplomacy, which in the LL format is correct. It definitely should be at 1, but there's no reason why we wouldn't be playing it. It's insanely good. I played a number of reps into Levi's Azalea in LL format, and every game that I won was because I played Warmongers and he just had to pass back to me. So again, one of the really powerful one-ofs that we are going to play no matter what. And then we get into a little bit more like, I guess, subjective choices where these might be based on your preference, but I still like 2 Biting Breeze. I think that this card is quite good. It's still just a good threat. It's an attack. It definitely extends your turns. It kind of helps you open up your turns too if you are missing a Tiger, and it's not really like, it is a relevant on hit that people might want to block, but in LL format, a lot of it is racing, so they don't have to be as concerned about blocking it. And then I'm playing 2 blue Descendant Gust Waves. So again, we're not playing the max 6 Descendant Gust Waves between the reds and the blues. I did trim back. I did debate this quite a bit, actually, of saying, do I want to play 3 reds, 2 blues, or do I want to play 3 blues, 2 reds? And ultimately, I decided that the damage was more important than the blue. I have had many times too where like I play a blue Descendant Gust Wave and then I transcend with Preserved Tradition and put the bonds back into my deck and then play out the bonds line again. So I still am favorable for this line, even though we have been so restricted from playing only 1 bonds. It's still so powerful in the games, and the games go so short anyway. You really only need 1 bonds. If you're even playing a second bonds, the game is probably already over at that point. So I still think it's pretty relevant to play this. And then I have the triple 100 Winds blue, and then I'm still playing the Winds of Eternity blue. Now, I'm doing this because I do like them as finishers. Like, Winds of Eternity has been cut on and off between a number of Zen lists, but I still like it as a viable finisher, especially with Bonds of Ancestry. You know, since we lost Bonds of Ancestry in CC, a lot of people are cutting it, but I do think it is a relevant finisher where at the end, if you're just trying to find a good card to end with, and then also with like CYB Oldoms and stuff like that, being able to put 100 Winds back in your deck is still quite relevant. So this is my main core that I'm playing right now. It has been very consistent. It has done very well for me in like a number of matchups where like I very rarely even want to change anything like sideboarding wise, because it just does what you want it to do. The point of the deck is to go ham and just obliterate your opponent as fast as possible with Art of Wars and Ancestral Harmonies and a bunch of Anthem effects and stuff. So yeah, this has been extremely consistent. I've been very happy with this. There are a couple different things that I'm trying out and trying to experiment with, and we'll get into that later in the video, and I'm just going to be providing you different ideas to sync, maybe if you get more reps, because there's also like so many decks in LL. I haven't had a lot of time to extensively test against like Dromais and Prisms and just all the other decks that are powerful, so I have different options depending on what you want to do. So this is the main core. Then we're going to get into equipment, because as you can see, I have a fat stack of equipment here. A lot of my sideboard space has been dedicated to various equipment pieces, because the main core as a combo like aggro deck, kind of like Kano, you don't want to alter too much because it's built to be as consistent as possible. So one thing you can alter is your equipment suite, because that can give you some benefits without having to change the actual consistent package of your main deck. So to start, I have my weapons. So I have the Tiger Taming Kakara, of course, and then I also have 2 of the Zephyr Needle. And I think in LL format, you actually are playing Zephyr Needle way more than you're playing the Kakara. I still have the Kakara for like Guardians, you know, against Starvo or Oldham, or like slower decks where you just kind of want to have the value. But games go so fast in this format that most of the time I'm finding that I'm playing Zephyr Needle. And Zephyr Needle is just so much value in the speed of the game, where even if they want to use a card to block to break it, the games are only going to go like 3 to 5 turns maybe at most, so you don't even care. You're just super happy to have them give you a card. It's kind of like Winter's Bite, right? Like a 1-cost Winter's Bite to remove a card from their hand. Even with like Command and Conquer too, there's a lot of times where I'll pitch to Zephyr Needle, and I want them to use a card to block. So they'll invest a 3 block to break my needle, and then I'll CNC them. And then they're just in like a really bad position because they gave me a 3 block. They got to give me 2 more cards or the CNC is going to disrupt them. So Zephyr Needle can also be used to bait people out. Another thing is Zephyr Needle into Dromai is insane. I can't even believe, like, retrospectively, that ninjas weren't thinking about that back in the day with Dromai. But Zephyr Needle nowadays, you just get to clear so many dragons with Zephyr Needle. You just get to maintain board state so easily. It's just such a powerful weapon, especially now. So I'm a huge fan of Zephyr Needle. And then we just have our very standard equipment, right? We got Traverse, we have 12 Petal Kasaya. I'm still playing Shuko. I still think this is quite relevant for the longer matchups, especially like CYB Oldham and Guardians, where you want to have the armor to be able to block out, and also like Prism and stuff like that with all the prevention effects. I do think that Shuko is still very good in this meta. I actually was only playing Shuko until like a couple days ago when Levi had told me about Stubbies, and I had just completely forgotten that that was a card that you could even play in LL format. I am still playing Stubbies, but I was winning a lot of games just playing Shuko anyway. So I was like, all right, well, still must be a viable card. And then we have our beautiful Stride of Reprisal back in the deck. Now that we have Art of War, Strides is insane again. So I'm still playing this over the other brutes that we're playing now in CC, but Stride's crazy. Definitely got to play that. And now we get into like my alternate equipment where depending on the matchup, these can kind of give you slight edges. So to begin with, we have Time Skippers. Obviously, Time Skippers is for Prism. I think that it is one of the ways that you are going to lose that matchup. Well, for one, Prisoner Awakener of Soul, I think is a tough matchup. They're very aggressive. They get a lot of value. It's very hard for you to stop them when they start rolling, other than having poppers, which I have a few extras in the sideboard. But if you do get your big pop-off turn, like your double Art of War, you've used your boots, you've used your headpiece, and then they arc light you, it's just GG at that point. So Time Skippers was a tech that I had saw Brody playing towards the end of last format with Zen for that very reason. And I just think it is super relevant in LL format, and for the same reasons, is worth a slot just so that you don't get the instant blowout by the Prism player because they had Arclight Sentinel, which feels so bad. And then, of course, we got Stubbies. Awesome card that we get to actually play this in LL format. I'm more so playing it for like the hyper aggro races, like against Chain and Dash.io, and it's very good against Dash.io too because for T-Bone it's a free block, so you get to use this to protect your equipment. So very relevant against mechs. So yeah, any of like the hyper aggro decks, I'm playing Stubbies. Now some of you might be playing alternate variants with like Belittle and stuff like that, where Stubbies will get so much more value out of those. But I'm still finding that the card on average gets me like 4 to 6 value. It's not like last format in the glory days of LL Zen where you're just playing all the bonds and descendants. So you get like all this abuse out of being able to just cycle bonds, like yellow and blue bonds and descendants and stuff, and they're all getting buffed by Stubbies. We don't really have that anymore. So Stubbies is still good for aggro races because you're going to get that value in a very fast match, but it's not like crazy like it used to be because we just don't have the ability to loop those lower cost cards. But on turns with like Tiger Swipe and the Tiger Domain, where you're actually getting a lot of Tigers, it can rack up a lot of value very fast because all your Tigers will get buffed. So that's how I'm finding I'm using it now, is really trying to push big turns with Tiger Swipe and Jade Tiger Domain so that I can get even more value off of it. And then this is a card that it's theory. I haven't actually tested it yet. So take this one with a grain of salt. This is a slot that could easily be pushed out for something else, but I still have the Mask of Momentum. Obviously, this is only for Dromai. I have not actually gotten to test the Dromai matchup yet. I don't know how relevant it is and how much I need to prepare for it. Back in the day with Ninjas into Dromai, you mostly were playing Mask of Momentum just because you could maintain board state and keep up with them in value. Now, we didn't have Traverse. We had Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. So I don't know if it's worth enough to give up Traverse because Traverse is going to give you those mega turns to just push over and destroy them. But Mask might be relevant with Zephyr Needles to actually maintain board state and keep up with them on draw value. So this is a theory. It's not tested yet. I have it in there just because it might be good. but I haven't tested it yet. So other people in the comments, if you have, I'd love to hear your opinions on it and see what you think. But I will find my answer shortly once I actually play a few games of Dromite to know if it's even worth the slot. So, and then I have Kano stuff. You know, Kano is the best deck in LL. I would say personally, I think Kano is the best deck still, even after the nerfs. So it's not a great matchup. You're still struggling. It's still very like, I hope I just don't get blown out, but you got to do the best you can. So playing Spellfray Tiara, Arcane Lantern, No Room Gloves, and Tide Flippers. AB3, Spell Void 1. It's the best that we can do, I think. And if you aren't playing this, you're just conceding at that point to Kano. And I don't want to do that against one of the best decks in the format. So I think these are still very relevant. So now moving into the sideboard stuff, this is where I have struggled a little bit to identify what is going to be the highest impact cards for the matchups that I struggle the most with. And I have a few ideas. So I'll show you first what I have it at. So this will be like the 80 that I'm currently testing. But then I have some alternative options that I have considered or thought of that I haven't had a chance to test yet, but might still be relevant. So we have Triple Flick Flack. This one I am the most confident on that will stay in the deck no matter what. Like, I am definitely going to keep Triple Flick Flacks just because it's your best defensive option that you have against Guardians. Like Starvo, for sure, you need to have the flicks. Against Lexi, you need the Flick Flax. Against Azalea, you need Flick Flax. So of all the D-React options, I think that Flick is the best one. So no matter what, I'm going to convert 3 of my sideboard slots into red Flick Flax. So we have that. And then I have 2 Cut Through the Facade. Because as I had mentioned before, I think that Prism is one of the most difficult matchups for this deck, especially Awakener of Soul. So I was going through all the options, and I think, in theory, this is the best card that we have to combat Prism because it's a 7-attack popper, and because it's like Runic Reclamation at home. It does effectively the same thing. We could still kind of throw it at the opponent to pop a Genesis or an Otarath or something that is relevant to us that doesn't make us have to give up our turn to do it. Funny thing also is like if you have a Tiger for 0 and you throw it into an Aura, it triggers Spectra and it dies. So that's just a relevant thing too to know as well. But I'm playing this in theory against Dromai, Prism, and then Prism Awakener of Soul. I still think it is relevant. Again, I need to test it a little bit more, but of all the options that I have, I think that this is the best one. And then I have one of Energy Potion. This is going to come in against the Ice decks, so Starvo, Oldham, Icelander, if they happen to still exist. And then maybe Lexi as well. Lexi's a little bit more of a wild card though, because you know there's like the Snapshot, Death Dealer, Lightning list that's going out there that's just like hyper aggro, and I don't think I want a non-block in there. But against like the Starvo and the Oldham, I'm just swapping out the Warmongers and just putting in the Epot. And I think that that's been just super helpful. I mean, that's like a tale as old as time for Ninja, like a sideboard tech slot against Ice is put in the Epot so that you can get around a Blizzard, get around a big Art of War turn. Like against CYB Oldham, you want to build up for like a mega turn, and Epot helps you facilitate those kinds of mega turns. So I think it's fine, 1 board slot. I'll probably keep this as well. I'm quite happy with the Epot. But then after talking about like Ice and stuff, you might be saying, well, one of the best tools to combat Ice, it's Belittle, of course, right? So I did consider Belittle. Right now, I would be considering, now up here, I'm going to have, this is like the maybe theory sideboard slots. Like maybe these could be things that we could swap for. So I would do 2 red Belittle, 3 red Belittle, 2 blue Minnowism. What I would probably slot these out for, I would maybe cut 1 red Descendant Gustwave and then cut the Breed Angers for the 3 Minnowisms, and then probably cut out the 2 Biting Breezes for the 2, or I'm sorry, I had said Belittle for the red attacks, and then the 2 blue Minnowisms would be cut for the Biting Breeze. This, I think, so like Belittle, I've thought about it a lot. If I'd want it, it would have to be a main board card. But the difference now versus where Zen was before was you had the whole bonds loop thing. So you had a lot of options that just played into the deck already to go off of Belittles. But right now, we're kind of more in a traditional Tiger combo build where you do have the 3 attacks, of course, like Aspect, Tiger Swipe, 100 Wins. But you're also playing a lot more. I think I counted it like 13 attacks that are not 3 attack or less between the Command and Conquerors and then the Maulings and stuff like that. And then also in the play patterns against decks that aren't playing ice, right, where you're not trying to get the extra blue, you end up with just having like an extra blue a lot of times because it's such an efficient curve right now in the deck where you get that minnowism, but it doesn't really help you pay beyond what you're already doing unless you're trying to pat for an ice CLF or a blizzard or something like that. And then, of course, the argument is you get to tutor out a blue so you can transcend off of it, which is very relevant as well. But I'm just not fully convinced yet that it's consistent enough or that it provides enough benefit to the deck to alter the consistency of the core that already exists. But I am going to test it a little bit more. I am going to look into it. So just know, like, I haven't completely forgotten of that belittle exists. I am aware and I want to look into it a little bit more, but I'm not fully 100% sold that it is the right way to build the deck at this time. And then if the Cut Through the Facade happens to be good, I have a third one, but I don't know if I actually want 3. Like 3 seems like a lot in terms of bricking your hands, and I don't want to draw like multiple Cut Through the Facades, especially with CNCs, because that's gonna hinder my ability to like kill them and pop off if I end up with a bunch of those in hand. So I'm more apprehensive about it, but maybe it's super good. And then we have Talisman of Cremation, Cosmic Awakening, and then Poison the Well. These are like the anti-fatigue CYB Oldhim tech cards, right? Where if that deck ends up being a problem, you have these to kind of combat it. But in my experience, your power is so great and that your speed is so fast that a lot of times the CYB Oldhim doesn't have the ability to like get to the point where they can survive and live, especially with cards like Tiger Swipe Shuko and stuff like that, where I'm just building up like 30 damage turns back to back. And, you know, by the time they get to like their 4th CYB, they're already dead. So it kind of seemed to be overkill for me. But maybe as the decks get more refined and people get better, you might need a little bit of extra padding so that the matchup doesn't get too bad for you. But I think that your deck is already built in such a way that like you kind of run those decks over anyway. I could be wrong, of course, but these are options that I'm considering. And then the last like kind of like meme option that I thought about was Talisman of Tithes. This card has been tried. Like I've messed with this card against Kano initially as Uzuri. Like I was trying this as Uzuri because, which if you don't know what it does, it's a go again card. It's when you play it, so you can transcend off of it. But it says if an opponent would draw 1 or more cards during your action phase, instead destroy this, and then they draw that many cards -1. So it kind of stops Kano from having a pop-off turn with Ragamuffins. Like if they try to use Ragamuffins, they put their card to the top and they don't get to draw another card. So it shuts down that option. It shuts down like if they try to tome, they draw 1 less card. So it's an annoying card against Kano. It's not like an instant blowout, but it definitely makes their life more difficult. So I have tried it with some success in the past. And then also it is relevant against Starvo because if they try to Crown of Seeds, it will stop them from being able to use their crown to draw an additional card. So again, it's kind of cute. It's kind of like a meme thing. I don't know if it's very real, but I would maybe consider trying it out. So if you also have other options or other sideboard things that you're trying out, I'd love to know what those are. Living Legend format is just very diverse, right? Like there's so many good decks and there are so many decks where it's very hard to focus a sideboard that can target all of it. So as I mentioned earlier, I've consolidated and just made my deck the most concise thing of like, I want to be a hyper aggressive Tiger combo list and my goal is to just kill them as fast as possible. So I've made a list that I think is the best at doing that. But when you go into altering it for sideboard options, you don't want to mess with it too much. So that's kind of the crossroads I've hit at this point. So Belittle is an option to just look at a natural like padding where you already put it into the deck. You don't need to like sideboard stuff in for it. But the E-Pot kind of fills that role as well. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, please let me know. Again, we're very early into the Living Legend format. There's not like a ton of data out there. So where we are currently at going into the calling in December, and then this weekend, there's the Battle Hardened in Columbus, which will hopefully give us some more information as well. But this is going to be a good starting point for you if you are looking to play Zen in the Living Legend format. And I hope that you enjoyed this and that it gives you something to mess around with, because as I've looked around for Living Legend stuff, there's like not much stuff out there. So why not make it myself is where I thought. So we hope you enjoy this. We're going to keep making Living Legend deck techs and gameplay as we get to progress closer and closer to the calling. So if you have any things that you would like to suggest to see, I think that we're going to be doing a Starvo deck tech, and then Levi also has an Azalea deck tech that he's going to be working on. So those will be coming down the pipeline shortly. But hope you enjoyed this. Again, leave me some advice in the comments. I'm not going to provide a February link because I have the whole deck list here. But again, please provide whatever you're doing, and if you have any ideas, I'm happy to hear them. So hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the video.